The Mystery of the Lost Town. 100 years ago, deep in the mountains, there was a small town called Raven Hollow. It was a peaceful place where everyone knew each other. Children played in the streets, shopkeepers greeted their customers with smiles, and families gathered together every evening. The town seemed perfect, but one cold autumn night, something strange happened. Just before midnight, a thick white fog began rolling down from the mountains. The fog was unlike anything the townspeople had ever seen. It moved silently through the streets, covering houses, trees, and roads. Many residents looked out of their windows in confusion. Then, at exactly midnight, the clock tower in the center of town stopped ticking. Everything became silent. The next morning, people from nearby villages traveled to Raven Hollow for business as usual. But when they arrived, they were shocked. The town was gone. The houses had disappeared. The shops had vanished. Even the roads were missing. Only an empty field remained where the town once stood. No one could explain what had happened. Search teams spent months looking for clues. Newspapers across the country reported the mystery. Some believed a natural disaster had destroyed the town. Others thought the residents had somehow escaped during the night. But there was one problem. No bodies were found. No signs of destruction existed. And no one from Raven Hollow was ever seen again. As the years passed, the mystery became a legend. People stopped searching. The lost town slowly faded into history. 100 years later, a young explorer named Daniel became fascinated by the story. He had spent years studying old maps and forgotten records about Raven Hollow. Most people laughed at him. They said the town was just a myth, but Daniel believed otherwise. One foggy evening, he decided to visit the location where the town had once stood. As darkness fell, a familiar white fog began to appear. It was the same fog described in reports from 100 years earlier. Daniel felt nervous, but he continued walking forward. Suddenly, he noticed something strange. A distant bell rang through the darkness. Then another, and another. The sound seemed to be coming from somewhere inside the fog. Daniel followed it. After several minutes, the fog began to clear. What he saw next made his heart stop. Standing before him was a town, an entire town. The streets were intact. The buildings looked new. Lights glowed warmly through the windows. It was Raven Hollow. The lost town had returned. Daniel carefully walked through the streets. Everything looked frozen in time. Old-fashioned cars stood parked outside buildings. Store signs looked exactly as they did in photographs from a century ago. Then he saw people, real people. They walked through the streets as if nothing unusual had happened. A woman carrying groceries smiled at him. Children laughed while playing near the clock tower. No one seemed frightened. No one seemed confused. To them, it was just another normal day. Daniel approached an elderly man and asked what year it was. The man looked surprised. "Why, it's 1926, he replied. Daniel's face turned pale. For the people of Raven Hollow, only one night had passed, but outside the town, 100 years had gone by. Daniel realized something impossible had happened. The town had somehow become trapped outside normal time. As midnight approached, the fog began returning. The town bell started ringing again. The people continued their daily lives, unaware of the danger. Daniel knew he had to leave. He ran toward the edge of town as the fog grew thicker. Just before reaching safety, he looked back. The clock tower struck midnight. The fog swallowed the streets. The lights disappeared, and Raven Hollow vanished once more. When Daniel finally escaped, he returned with a team of researchers. But the town was gone. Only an empty field remained. No matter how hard they searched, they found nothing. Years later, Daniel published his story. Most people didn't believe him. Some called it a hoax. Others called it impossible. But Daniel knew what he had seen. And sometimes, on cold autumn nights, travelers passing through the mountains still report hearing distant bells ringing through the fog. The bells of a town that should not exist. A town lost somewhere between time and reality. A town waiting to be found again. The end.